let's get into some of the keys to victory for Notre Dame in this game, Ryan. And let's begin with the side that has the most to prove this weekend, and that's the offensive line. And there are certain things that are obvious, like don't turn it over 3 times, don't throw a pick six, play hard. Like there's the generic things that are assumed. We're not going to get into those. Those things need to happen. But specific keys, right? That's what we do here. We're trying to get into the nitty-gritty. I think the first thing I need to see that's going to tell me that this team has made changes, but also is a key to success against Cal, specifically against Cal, is we need to see this team be more willing to spread out and to move more. Not just the little quick motions that they're doing, but like move more. Like, hey, be 11 personnel, but then do 4, 5, 6 different things out of 11. Don't run a million plays, run a million formations, right? That's the kind of thing is if you feel the need to do something a million times, and I'm being hyperbolic here, then make it be formations, not plays. Right. And if we see some of that, I think that's a key because as we've talked about before, Cal is 2 different defenses. There's the defense from here, like from the edge to the edge, and it goes all the way back. So from their ends to their inside backers to their safeties, they're a long, big football team, right? And that's what they use to shut down the run. Then there's what they have on the perimeter, their corners and their nickel. Big, physical, smart, sound up here. Short, little, tiny, physical, smart on the perimeter. They're smart and physical and sound everywhere, but they're really small outside. Cal wants you to go condense. They want you to feel the need to go 12 personnel in order to get the run game going. And so if Notre Dame is willing to spread the field out, use its speed advantage on the perimeter, then that's going to give them an opportunity to have success because it's going to force Cal into some sub packages that maybe they'd rather not get into. And their sub packages means they take out an outside linebacker who's 6'3", 245, and they put in a 5'10" nickel corner. That plays into Notre Dame's hands. Okay, so to me, that's the biggest thing for me is a shift in identity from a formational and a personnel standpoint that then is followed by using that schematically to get Cal going left, right. And now that may seem counterintuitive to what people think Notre Dame is, but as Ryan and I talked about yesterday, for this game especially, and to get this team going, Notre Dame needs to kind of reverse engineer its offense a little bit. It's been a run team that's going to set up the pass. This week against Cal, simply put, you're not good enough to do that, in my opinion. You need to do it kind of opposite. Use the perimeter, use your speed, use the pass game to then open up opportunities for your run game. And that's where I think this team needs to go. It's like key number 1. That's a key to success for this offense.
From a general sense, the 3-4 defense was created to stop the inside run, right? Like that's the biggest thing. So we know how Cal wants to win this game. They want to be tough. They want to be physical. They want to stop the run, like you said, Brian. Like they want to pitch tents inside. Like Correa, the nose tackle, 91, wants to stay in his 2 gaps, right? Like he wants to play down the middle and have A gap to A gap. That's where he wants to play. Carlton, the defensive lineman that kind of mixes in with all these other guys, right? Like he wants to stay in his gap. These linebackers, they want to feast inside. Number 10 and Sermon, they want to play inside out. They want to dominate the interior of this offensive line and stop the run. That's what they want to do. So with anything, this is offensively or defensively, you want to make the opposition uncomfortable, right? You want to make them do things that they are not accustomed to doing. Chasing to the perimeter is what this team does not want to do. Working to the outside, having to defend bigger receivers with your smaller defensive backs. Those are things that you do not want to do. So I agree. I think that the rushing number in this game, I think, is going to tell a lot about this game, Brian, because if Notre Dame is able to run the ball, that tells me that they started out in this game and they said, okay, we need to soften this interior up a little bit. How do we do that? Let's get outside, maybe a jet occasionally, right? Some outside zone. We'll throw some RPO and just hit some screens out there. Yeah. So you want to soften the edges here because you think that you can win there, right? Like I'm not just softening just to soften. I'm softening because I think I can win out there and then I'm going to make the defense uncomfortable. And as they get more and more comfortable, they have to overcompensate to start stopping the outside runs, everything to the perimeter. That's when you get gashes up the middle because now you have to overcompensate and you are now taking guys out of the box or at least structurally moving them out a little bit so that you do stop that outside perimeter run. So that is the biggest thing for me, is that I think that the rushing total is going to be very indicative, because this is a staunch run defense. If they're able to run the football, that tells me they softened it early and then they're able to gash in the middle. I don't think that Notre Dame's going to be able to. And this is not a fault of Notre Dame necessarily, because most teams would be like this. I don't think most teams can just go play Cal and just say, like, hey, we're running inside zone all day. That's all we're doing, right? Like, we're running inside power. That's it. That's all we're going to do. That's not how you're effective against Cal. You know where they're weakest at, attack where the weaknesses are, make them uncomfortable, and that's how you soften the interior of this defense. And I think that that's going to be the biggest indicator, to your point, of a victory, is how well Notre Dame's able to run the football this week.
Now, if Notre Dame comes out and runs inside zone and duo and just blows Cal off the ball and they're the line that everybody thought they are, fine. I mean, okay, that's cool, but I don't see that going from what we've seen the first 2 weeks to that in week 3. I think you can eventually get to that, but I feel like just assuming that's going to happen, to me, just doesn't it's just not reality in my view. I just have a hard time saying that the light just goes on to that degree. And so there needs to be some smart planning in regard to what this team is going to do schematically. So I think that's a big key. I think a couple keys to success, Ryan, obviously there's simple things like don't do stupid things, right? Don't false start on 3rd and 3. Don't have a 22-yard gain brought back by a silly, lazy block in the back penalty, right? Like dumb things like that can't happen. And then beyond that, they need to hit a deep shot early.
Yes.
And I don't care how, if it's off an RPO, if it's designed, if it's a sluggo, a wheel, but just a straight go. I do not care how it happens, but they've got to hit a deep shot early. Cal's not an easy team to hit deep shots on based on how they normally play. I just don't feel they're going to normally play like they normally play. I think they're going to bring another guy down in the box and say, you have shown no ability to throw the ball down the field, whether it's the quarterback not being able to hit open guys, whether it's the protection, whatever the case may be. You haven't shown you can hit that. They're going to need to hit a deep shot or 2 early to soften Cal up. That's what we refer to there. And then I want to see some space, and what Tommy Rees has not done a good job of so far this year. And it's something that I think that he believes in, is getting the ball in space. There's different ways to do that. Everybody thinks that space is just throwing now screens and bubble screens and stuff like that. And that's true. That's part of it. Sure. But there's also other ways where you're using levels concepts, where you're doing things to where in space isn't always quick. Space can be take the top off of Braden Lindsey, have Lorenzo Styles run an under route, or have Michael Mayer run an under route to run right across the linebacker's face, Michael, get them to come down on you. And then bam, Lorenzo Styles is coming over the middle, catching and running at 15. There's different things like that you can also do to get guys in space, but you've got to use your alignment. That's where the spread comes from. You've got to use some of your movement. You've got to use your route combinations and such that, look, the horizontal stretch stuff isn't working. Your receivers aren't good enough route runners yet to know how to win on a stop route. They have no concept. They're just running right into a guy, right? And then turning around and boxing out. Like, that's not going to work. So until they learn that, you've got to do some things. You've got to get them moving. Mm-hmm. And that's how you can use those concepts. So that's why you need more levels, more verticals, more things like that. More post-snap switching is something I would also do a lot of. Some pre-snap movement where you can get some stacks is something I would do more of, which allows you to kind of get off the press. It allows guys to get moving before the snap. It allows you to do more stuff with that post-snap stuff like we talked about. Because a post-snap switch, when you're just in your normal alignment, is certainly something you can do, but it's a little bit harder to do. It takes a little bit longer to do. You stack those guys, and all of a sudden you can do a lot of different things. You can do, guy go vertical quick underneath route. There's a lot of stuff you can do. I want to see the creativity in that regard, not running a million different plays, but that's where I want to see some of the creativity. I think if we can see some of that stuff, that's a way that you can help Drew Pine get into an early rhythm. Yeah, because that's my biggest concern. Drew looked not good yesterday. And he did not look good in the practices that my staff was at, right? He did not look good in the spring, not just in the spring game, which I don't care about, but in the practices. Drew's in a funk. You've got to get that kid some early momentum. You've got to find some early success for him. So some one-on-one deep shots, some things where you're using your combinations to get guys free in space where he has a simple 1-2 read. And use your backs more, and I don't know if this is the week to run a million screens, we've called for them the last couple weeks. This is a pretty disciplined defense. So the running back screens is what I'm referring to. There's perimeter screens that I like, but the running back, the slow developing slip screen, I don't know if this is the week for that because their linebackers are pretty smart. They may sniff it out, but there are certainly things that you can do in the screen game beyond just that I think can be effective. And if you're going to run a running back screen, it needs to be a little bit more creative than just a check, slip, just, run a reverse action off of that or something and have run a reverse already, do something to get their eye discipline. That's a big thing for Cal, Ryan, is you've got to get their eye discipline off. You got to get them thinking this instead of this. Cause if Cal's able to play downhill all game, you're playing right into their hands, into their hands. That's
because their strongest position group on it as a team, in my opinion, is their linebackers, right? Like their linebackers are really good football players. Like Sermon and number 10 are good football players. They really are, and they're big kids, right? Sermon's 6'2", 240. Number 10 is 6'3", 255. Like they're big inside backers. They don't want to play in space, Brian. Like that, your biggest thing, right, is that you want to manipulate and create a little bit, and that goes from a lot of different layers, right? Like for Drew Pine, get some easy completions, man. Like that's easy stuff, right? Because you're manufacturing space and you're manufacturing leverage, right? So in that instances, you're creating some easy throws for Drew. Perfect. You're also manipulating eyes of the second level defenders, those two inside linebackers that I'm talking about. I want them to be extremely uncomfortable because to your point, if they are just triggering and getting downhill all day, it's an easy football game for them, man. It's an easy game. But if you start, hey, let's work the seam a little bit and we'll bring somebody coming underneath and have to really manipulate their eyes, or maybe we're trading tight ends moving over to one side or the other. There's some motion coming across and you're doing some switching from a post-snap perspective. That's manipulating eye discipline, right? And this is a disciplined team. So you need to do things that get their clock moving, right? Because they have seen, they're very, very savvy football players, but you can manipulate them. And I want to see it because, again, if there's hope for Tommy Rees, it's that this week he comes into this football game and he knows, hey, their second level is really good. It's probably their best unit. I have better athletes than they have in space. Let's create some space there. Right. Let's get them uncomfortable. I want Jackson Sermon chasing a screen outside. I want him chasing to the perimeter. I want a post-snap switch where you get a guy coming across the middle and now he has to redirect in space. Make this second level uncomfortable. And you do that by creating space. Manufacture, create, and capitalize. That's the biggest thing for me this week.